Hello and welcome to Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Morea, a 16-year-old girl from New York. And here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. Hello and welcome to this episode of Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. Today, I am so honored to bring you Dr. Afolabi Brown. She's a triple board certified sleep physician who specializes in helping children and parents achieve better sleep. Sleep is something that I have personally struggled with for a while, and I know that pretty much everyone is also trying to figure it out. We've all heard that sleep is important, but why is it important and how much should we actually prioritize it? In this episode, we explored the science behind why sleep is so important for our health, especially as teenagers. And then Dr. Brown dives into some really practical tips for how you can start to improve your sleep today and on your own terms. This is such an informative episode that any teen or parent of a teen could benefit from, and the advice she shares is honestly life changing. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Dr. Brown.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's an honor. So, just starting off, why is sleep so important for our overall health and well being? Like, what happens on a scientific level when we sleep?
Yeah, so many things happen. Sleep is a time where our brains really undergo so many processes. It's actually not a passive process, it's an active process. So, from just memory consolidation to cleansing our brain of substances that it's been deposited over the course of the day. So, it has this system, they call it the glymphatic system. Lymphatic system. So similar to the lymphatic system where you get products that are waste products, you get rid of them through the lymphatic system. The glymphatic system allows your brain to do that because those deposits on the surface of your brain can have side effects over the course of time. So that's something that happens. And then your immune system also undergoes rejuvenation during sleep. Certain hormones like growth hormone gets produced in certain stages of sleep. And growth hormone is so important, not just for growth in terms of kids' growth, but also for muscle and tissue repair and protein metabolism and things like that. And then just your entire hormone balance and hormone regulation occurs during sleep as well. It has so many benefits. It is so important.
It sounds like when you're sleeping, your body and like you have like these little workers just working at night to like repair all the different parts of your body and like clean up and reset for the next day. And I guess like if you don't have
Exactly.
time for all those processes to happen, then you feel the consequences. What's so unique about sleep for teenagers? And are there any things that happen when teenagers sleep that don't happen to like adults when they sleep?
All the benefits in teenagers, you'll see in adults, you'll see in children as well. I think the teen years are an important stage of life because there's so much going on in terms of development and growth. And so within that time, there are many changes that are also occurring, right? With the hormonal changes, there are what we call shifts. These are physiologic shifts. So there's a delay in our internal rhythms. They're called circadian rhythms. And these are the rhythms that are responsible for your body knowing when to be awake and when to sleep. So that is regulated by this whole complex system in our brain that prompts the release of a sleep hormone called melatonin. So when it's dark, your brain is triggered to produce melatonin. And that really is what makes you feel sleepy in the evening. Now, there's a shift where your natural bedtime is later as a teenager because those rhythms are just delayed. And so that is one change. The other change that you're experiencing It's also just sometimes the social pressures, work, friends, social media, all of those things are naturally going to contribute to a delay in sleep. So if you have homework deadlines, you're probably not going to want to go to bed in time. And so that's probably going to further delay your ability to fall asleep. And then a lot of times, especially during this season, a lot of teenagers experience some anxiety and all of that. So that anxiety in and of itself can contribute to mind racing at bedtime, which can then make it hard to fall asleep. So many things can happen that can contribute to not being able to fall asleep. And then on the back end of it, waking up, if you were able to sleep in naturally aligned with your normal rhythms, which is go to bed late and wake up later, you don't have that advantage in most places because you got to wake up early for school due to early school start times. So now we're talking about you're not going to bed in time in the evening, and then you now have to wake up super early to catch the bus. And so waking up at 6 a.m., waking up at 5 a.m. for someone who probably didn't go to bed until like close to midnight means you're short on sleep. And teenagers need anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And I know many teenagers, in fact, research shows that about 74% of teenagers are not getting enough sleep. And usually it's because of all these issues.
Yeah. I've heard that number 8 to 10 of hours of sleep being necessary for teenagers on average, and, like, I'm happy when I get 7. I hear my classmates like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I had a great night of sleep. I went to bed at 12 and I woke up at 6:30." Quality sleep time right there, 6.5 hours. The reality is that a lot of teenagers, like you're saying, was it, like, over 70% of teenagers
Mhm, mhm.
don't get adequate sleep? So, what is the impact on our mind and our body when we don't get a necessary amount of sleep?
Very good question. So many levels. I would start from just the mind piece. So sleep is important for our cognitive function. So your learning, your ability to focus, your ability to make executive decisions, your ability to remember things. Sleep is very important for all of those. So when you lose the benefit of good sleep consistently every night, then that's going to get affected. And we see a lot of inattention, difficulties really focusing and settling down. We see a lot of risky behaviors and risky decisions. The more likely, the poorer you sleep, the more likely you're going to listen to peer influences that are negative because your brain is not helping register to say it's probably not the best choice right now, but you're more likely to actually follow the crowd because other people will make that decision for you when you don't sleep. So that's one. A response time is also something. And I know many teenagers might be driving around now, might be playing sports and things like that. So that ability to respond quickly in any situation is impaired when you don't sleep. And then another area is our mood, emotion. So anxiety, depression, unfortunately, suicidality increases with poor sleep. Then in terms of your body itself, so your immune system, again, not getting enough sleep, you're more likely to feel sick, not feel well, maybe catch a cold when you don't get enough sleep. And then in some situations, if you're not sleeping well, your appetite is all over the place. You're more likely to binge eat. You're more likely to feed on like junk food, salty, mostly salty and sweet things. There are many levels to it. Being able to show empathy is also something we've seen in the research that you're less likely to be empathetic towards other people when you don't get enough sleep.
That's so interesting how, like, your lack of sleep not only affects, like, you, but it can affect the way that you treat other people if you're driving, and it impacts your response time that could hurt other people, and then you not sleeping enough could then lead to you making decisions that aren't good for you in the future. So it's just not about, like, that one day of, like, getting bad sleep. And
Yeah.
so, while sleep is, like, so important and there are obviously, like, a ton of downsides to not getting enough sleep, the reality is that a lot of teenagers are still unable to get in the adequate amount of sleep, even if that's something that they'd want to do. Do you have any tips for teenagers in terms of how we can achieve better sleep?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is listening to your podcast. I think understanding why this is important because if you don't know the why, then it just feels like this extra thing that you have to do. So having that awareness that sleep is important. When I sleep well, I get these benefits. When I don't sleep well, I get these consequences. And it's not to scare you, but to motivate you to make better decisions. And then I would follow that with boundary setting. So you have to eventually say, the day is done and it's time for me to sleep. And when you set those boundaries and look at sleep like a non negotiable, it's incredible how better you become in terms of time management. So the kind of things you probably would have just done and dilly-dallied, now you're like, oh, absolutely not. I need to get into bed by maybe 10:30 or 11. So I need to put these things aside. And so it doesn't mean you're not going to get to enjoy the normal things you want to enjoy, hang out on with your friends, hang out on social media, but you now have boundaries, which boundaries I feel are the most empowering thing for you because now you're in charge. You get to make that decision. Nobody's going to force you. Your parents don't need to remind you because you know how crappy you feel when you don't sleep. So you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take charge. And it's the most empowering thing for you to be in charge of your own health and the kind of decisions you make. And then I have a framework that I recommend. It's called the Create Restful Sleep Habit. So CREATE. You can find all that information on my website. It's C stands for consistency. So you want to be consistent when it comes to your sleep time and your wake up time. The reason why, again, is it reinforces that circadian rhythm so that your body knows what to expect. The second is R, where we talk about your bedtime routines. So having a routine means you might not have someone reading to you to sleep or rocking you to sleep or singing a song, but you just having some wind down time for you that's non-device related. Having a bath, reading a book, relaxing with some music. I think those are all healthy options. And then A stands for assign the bed for sleep and sleep in bed. So what are you doing in bed? You shouldn't be doing like all your homework, eating, playing video games in bed. Why? Because your brain makes associations where your brain will tell you, you already played all day in bed. You already like was on social media all day in bed, played video games, ate. Then your brain, when it's time to sleep, your brain is like, I'm racing right now because I have no clue what we're supposed to be doing. So when your brain understands that the bed is supposed to be where you sleep, then you're more likely to be able to sleep easier. And then T stands for tackle technology. So devices, exposure to devices and things like that might get in your way, right? Because it can disrupt your sleep rhythms because of the blue light. And then the content on your phone or on social media will be sometimes very stimulating and it makes it hard for you to settle to sleep. And so you want to take care of all of that. And then finally, E is eliminate. So you do want to try to get rid of things that may be disrupting your sleep. So drinking soda very late will stay in your system for a very long time and it will make it really hard for you to sleep. Drinking, of course, or drinking caffeine or anything of that sort can be very stimulating. And then even if you eat, you want to avoid eating heavy meals before bed because that can trigger reflux and can make it hard for you to settle down to sleep.
That's so interesting how there are so many different components that affect your sleep and that you can try to manage to, like, achieve better sleep. What you shared about, like, making your bed, like, just for sleeping, I find that so interesting, and I've never heard that before, and just, like, associations that your brain makes and how that can lead to better or worse sleep, that's just so cool. And then I know that it's one thing, like, getting yourself into bed and relaxed when you're in bed, but then sometimes even after you get into bed, you have trouble falling asleep. Like you're saying earlier, anxiety can make it hard to sleep, and a lot of teenagers deal with anxiety. So do you have any tips for teenagers who are struggling with anxiety that might contribute to making it hard for them to sleep in terms of, like, just erasing mind? What advice would you offer them in terms of how to fall asleep at night?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think first, if you have anxiety during the day, it's not going to go away just suddenly at night. So if the anxiety is all day, it's a 24-hour thing where you feel like you are just hyper aware. You should speak to a therapist or counselor. It's very important because that might be the root cause of why your mind is racing. If you're really noticing like, oh, you're okay, maybe you have a little bit of low anxiety during the day, but at night you now start to experience the mind racing. There are a few things I usually will recommend that you do. One is don't try so hard. Sleep is not something you try to do. Sleep is just something you do. So if you notice you're tossing and turning and you can't sleep, you can just get out of bed, especially if it feels like you've been in bed for about 15 to 20 minutes. Because remember, we talked about those associations. So if you are in bed and you're tossing and turning, then it might be your brain is now making an association between being in bed and feeling anxious. And we don't want that. We want your bed to be related to sleep. So you might need to get out of bed and maybe just sit on a, bean bag or on the floor and just chill. Just do whatever it is that you typically do that helps you relax. Don't go on your phone or anything. So that may be like, okay, I'm just going to do some reading. I've had some people do like scrapbooking or like an adult coloring book, stuff that just feeds you where you just can now absolutely wind down and feel less anxious. And then when you start to feel sleepy again, you can get into bed.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of that before because I'm someone who deals with, like, a racing mind and anxiety and insomnia, especially last year when, like, my hormones were all messed up because of not eating enough and my depression was, like, really bad, and I would always just, like, lie in bed and be as still as a statue, pretend that you're asleep until you fall asleep, and I'd get so
Mm.
worked up and so stressed about how I couldn't sleep, that would make me anxious, which would prevent me from sleeping, and that's a whole cycle. But just getting out of bed at that point and, like, finding another way to relax would actually be so helpful. I wish I had known that last year, I feel like that would have been, like, a life changer, honestly, at the time. And I hope
Mhm.
that it can help a listener who thought that there wasn't really any sort of solution to feeling anxious at night and not being able to sleep.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of teenagers, like we were talking about, their sleep schedules are like messed up. You're saying it's really important to be consistent, but the fact is that a lot of us aren't consistent with sleep. And if somebody's been inconsistent with sleep for a really long time, how can they realistically get back on track and establish these healthy sleep habits so that they can get that amazing night of sleep and then have all the benefits of a good night of sleep?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think no matter where you are, just realizing that you can do better. Don't feel bad like, oh my gosh, I have so much progress I need to make. And now I don't know where to start. Just pick one. One of the most common things I say you may want to do might be just start with maybe depending on what time you're waking up in the morning, just start with having a set wake up time. And so if you wake up typically, sometimes you wake up at 6, sometimes you wake up at 9, sometimes you wake up at 11, it just really throws your system out of whack. So pick a time and stick to it as much as possible. Granted, many times most teenagers are sleep deprived and so may need to sleep in on the weekend. That's okay. You can sleep in on the weekend, but you have to be careful. You have to balance that out because you don't want to sleep till noon on the weekends and then you have to wake up at 6 a.m. or during the week. So maybe you sleep in a couple of hours, 1, 2 hours max during the weekend, but that way you are keeping things as consistent as possible. And then, if you notice that you're going to bed super late, can't start building on it. Like if you don't go to bed till 2 a.m., for instance, set a goal to start going to bed at 1:30 a.m. or 1:45 a.m. Like gradually build into it. Gradually set that up. Don't be like, oh, I've been going to bed at 2 a.m. Now I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m. You're not going to be able to fall asleep. It's too much of a jump. And so really move that goal slowly, be gracious, be kind to yourself, and you'll definitely get there.
How long does it normally take to get into, like, a healthy sleep schedule? I know you said that, like, if you have been going to bed at 2 and then you try to go to bed at 10, that's just not possible. But how long would it take to get that bedtime down to a reasonable hour given your circadian rhythm?
It shouldn't take time, but it varies for different people. Some people are very sensitive to change. And so you may need to go through a very gradual, like 15-minute increment process. Some people can do an hour jump. They could go like, oh, so because they're already exhausted anyway. And so they may do an hour. So it could take a few days, it could take weeks. The important thing is just make sure you're making progress. Don't Set it on your timeline, but very intentional about making sure that you're making progress like every 1 to 2 nights.
And then I know for a lot of people, especially teenagers, what keeps us up late is like homework sometimes, and
Mhm.
like the fact that we need to get it done. What do you think we should do in that case where we have like a ton of homework that we need to do and it's getting late? Like, would you recommend going to bed and doing it in the morning, or like what's best in terms of how our brain will function when we're doing the homework and how rested we'll feel the next day?
Great question. So I think it's really, again, this is about autonomy. Try not to leave things to the last minute. So if you can do that, if you can be very intentional about how you manage your time. And I always encourage, I think anybody can do a time log. Like if you find out that, oh my goodness, I don't end up doing my homework until close to midnight, why is that happening? And just be observant. Observe, like, okay, I get back home from school. What else am I doing? Am I just hanging around, just chilling? Am I taking a nap? Am I just not really doing anything? Then just observe and then see what happens after dinner. Like, am I just playing video games? And then like at 11 p.m. now I'm on a crunch for time. And so from that observation, because if you don't observe it, it'll be hard for you to know where to figure things out. From that observation, you can now tell yourself, like, how do I do this where I can still enjoy some me time, but I'm not sacrificing my sleep? Because when you can answer that question, you will know when to fit your homework in. Because now you're sacrificing sleep to get your homework done and you want to just move things around. So just observe it, be your own, like do it the way you feel will be best for you. And so that may look like, okay, you know what? I get back from school, I relax a little bit, I talk to my friends a little bit, and then I get right on it. And so you'll see that as now at the end of the day, you're not wound up at 11 p.m. trying to finish homework. You did it already and you did it on your terms, but you still got to do the things you enjoyed. But now, because you set boundaries, you did it on your own terms.
Wow, that's really helpful because I know I'm one of the people procrastinates a little bit with work and then ends up doing it the last minute really late at night. So I guess just doing it on your own terms earlier would make it so much
Yeah.
better just in
Yeah.
every way. But there's always the case where like we have as teenagers just like so many extracurricular activities in this event and that event maybe, and then we get home and it's late. So what do we
Mm,
do in the case where we're not able to set boundaries on our own terms and get the work done earlier in the day?
yeah. I will say this, and this may not be a popular opinion. I would say I think a lot of teenagers are doing way too much. You're part of so many organizations, you're doing so many things. And again, sleep becomes sacrifice. So I think a time audit will help. I don't think you need to be all things to all people. I know it will look good in the future in terms of depending on where you're trying to get to, but you may need to start to come up with, okay, what is my priority list? And maybe I can't join 4 clubs all at once. Maybe I'm going to join maybe one this season and next season. Maybe I can't do all the fall sports or 3 or 4 of them. Maybe I'll pick the one I really enjoy. Maybe I can't volunteer for all the different things. Or maybe I'll pick one that really feels very true and aligned to my values. And that helps you to do it in a way where you don't feel guilty. It helps you to do it in a way where you feel like you're contributing meaningfully to your society. But it also makes it in such a way that now you're not sacrificing your sleep and you're not sacrificing your boundaries. So even if it feels like things are too many and you don't have boundaries, there are some of those things that are within your control. And if you speak with your parent and say, hey, I want to do things on my terms in a way that's safe and healthy for me, they can help you think through like, okay, maybe 1 or 2 of these activities don't have to be done right away. I think that's a conversation you want to have with yourself with a plan because it's not about, oh, now I'm going to do nothing because I want to sleep. No, we don't want that. We want you to be busy. We want you doing things that's productive, but we want it such that it's not so overwhelming now that you now don't have enough time to sleep. And when you learn those strategies early, I promise you, when you become an adult and everything gets thrown at you, it will really help you. It's a skill that will last a lifetime.
Yeah, it's really like because you sleep throughout your entire life, so learning how
Mhm,
to manage your sleep is a skill that will benefit you for your entire life. And I guess, like you were saying before, like making sleep a non-negotiable, like you have to
mhm,
go to sleep, and then just seeing how that can enhance all the other aspects of your life. I guess if you're spreading yourself so thin, you're not going to be able to really do so great at anything if you're sacrificing
mhm.
sleep, which then makes it so that you can't focus or think when you're trying to do all those extracurriculars or stuff like that. And so, what should teenagers do then in the case that they don't get sleep one day? Because I know that there are times where teenagers have to pull an all-nighter or they only get like 2 hours of sleep. So, when we get up in the morning, what do we do? Do we try to like take a nap during the day? Do we try to go to bed extra early? Like, what do we do in this, like, worst case scenario emergency situation?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that would definitely happen from time to time. You don't need to go crazy about it. It's just know that you might have a little bit of a rough day. You can take a nap if you get back home. I would say if you're going to take a nap, though, you try to avoid taking a nap that's too long and you avoid taking a nap that's too late in the day. So maybe get back home right after school and just take a nap for about 30 minutes. But if you start to take a nap at like 5 or 6 p.m. and then you nap for like 2 hours, you're not going to be able to feel sleepy the next night. So you just have to balance it. But a nap is okay, especially if you have those nights where you've been sleep deprived.
So I guess it's like don't overcompensate, but just get back into that schedule.
Mhm. Yeah.
So once you establish like a better schedule for yourself in terms of sleep, how long would you say it takes until you can really start to consistently feel the benefits of getting a good night's sleep?
Usually from the first night of a really good night of sleep, you start to feel that clarity. You start to feel
Wow.
less of living in a fog. Yeah, within the first day. But then now consistently that now builds up. So you start to see a ripple effect over time. But I usually you get some very short term, just like one night of bad sleep will cause a certain type of consequence. And then several nights and months of bad sleep will then start to cause more of the mood issues and things like that. So the same way, repairing all that, you'll start to feel better within a day or two.
Wow. Even if you've
Mhm.
been inconsistent with sleep for a while, it'll only take that.
It will. It will. It's again, it's accumulative, but you'll start to already feel a change. You wake up in the morning and you already sense you after a good night of sleep. You're like, oh wow, today I'm waking up feeling better than yesterday. But now the cumulative effect of that is something that will come as you become more consistent.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing to hear and honestly so motivating. And now I think thanks to this conversation, I'm gonna really tackle my sleep habits. And this has been amazing. So, where can listeners go to connect with you or to learn more about the work that you do?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's restfulsleepmd.com. I'm on social media at Restful Sleep MD. And then I have a book, which I think would be a great read too. It's mainly for parents, but there are chapters in there that would be helpful even for teenagers. And I think it's a good read for teenagers because it really talks a lot around the physiology of sleep. So everything I told you, physiology of how sleep works right from the beginning, from babies to like you're ready to go to college. So I think that's a good resource. It's called Beyond Tired. That's the name of the book, and you can find it on Amazon.
Well, I love that title. That's really cool. I'll link that in the show notes so that anyone who wants to read it can grab a copy. Just one last question that I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast. If you had one piece of advice for your teenage self, what would it be?
I would say be yourself. Now, what does that mean? It means that anybody that will not accept you or love you for who you are, you can let them go. And I think a lot of times as a teenager, at least when I was growing up, the peer influence, and I know that still exists now, and that need to please other people can potentially change who you are deep down. And you never want to lose that. You never want to lose that spark because you're trying to conform to what culture or friends or so called influences expect from you. So if you stay grounded to who you are, stay grounded to your values, and surround yourself with the right people who will help you be a better version of yourself and who you can pour into as well, really will create room for magic to happen.
That's so meaningful, and I relate a lot to that, and I hope that a lot of people listening also realize you don't have to change who you are, you just have to find an environment that'll love you for who you are already.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for coming on the podcast today. This has been amazing. I've learned so much for myself, and I hope that the audience has learned a lot too. And I just can't wait to get this episode out there so that people can listen to all of these amazing tips. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Balancing Act Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. Even though I recorded this interview a few weeks ago, I'm honestly still mind blown by the information Dr. Brown shared. So, here are some of the points that I thought were super interesting and important. So, starting off, Dr. Brown shared that sleep is key. It's an active process where your body clears out deposits on your brain, your immune system undergoes rejuvenation, and important hormones are created. And a whole lot more happens too. So it's so important for hormone balance and just being able to function as a human. And then, second, it's inevitable that teens will have a later bedtime because of the changes that are going on in our bodies and then the external stresses that we can't control. The third thing was that not going to sleep at a good time and for a decent period of time is so detrimental to your mental health and can make you feel more anxious or depressed and inhibit your critical thinking abilities. The fourth thing was that it's so important for you to find your own motivation and to set your own boundaries for sleep. You know yourself best, and setting boundaries can be so empowering. The fifth thing was to create restful sleep habits with Dr. Brown's CREATE acronym. One of the things that she shared in that acronym that I thought was so interesting was you want to make your bed a place for sleep and nothing else because your brain makes associations about if your bed is made for sleep or not. And so you want to make sure that your brain knows that you're supposed to snooze in your bed. And then another part of the acronym that I thought was really important is consistent sleep. You want to keep your sleep schedule consistent so that it doesn't throw your circadian rhythm out of whack. And then the next thing was you want to be mindful of your schedule so that you can get to bed on time and then create this schedule on your own terms. You want to find what activities you want to do on your own terms to find time to sleep. Don't do every single thing you think that you could possibly fit into your schedule. It's not worth it. And if it takes away from your sleep, then you can't function well doing literally anything. And then the tip she shared about how to go to sleep with anxiety was so just honestly mind boggling to me because that was not an approach that I had ever considered, but it makes so much sense. If you can't sleep, get out of bed, calm down, and then go back to bed. Such a good piece of advice. And then another thing she shared that was so important was you gotta take small steps towards better sleep. So just start off by setting a regular wake up time and then gradual steps to going to bed earlier. But then she also shared how quickly you can feel the effects when you start to get a good night's sleep. So I'm honestly pretty motivated to get my sleep under control after this interview. And then she also talked about not overcompensating for when you don't sleep well. Just get yourself back on track. You don't have to go to bed at 6 o'clock p.m. if you pulled an all nighter. Just get yourself back on track. And oh, one more thing she shared. Even though it wasn't about sleep, she shared to not change who you are. And I think that's really important. So I hope you learned something from this episode. I learned so much. It was so amazing. So happy that I could have her on the podcast. And go ahead and please check out her amazing book, Beyond Tired, which you can find on Amazon. I'll link it in the description. It's super cool, super informative, and yeah, bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Balancing Act: Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on Instagram at balancingact.podcast or on our website balancingact.life, which are both linked in the description. If you really want to support the podcast, leaving us a rating, hopefully a good one, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify would be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please feel free to reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find on the website. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, life's a balancing act, and sometimes you fall on your face, but you are not alone.